The Vorik Grand Chamber reeked of burnt incense and arrogance. Dane Mercer stood at the center of the circular hall, his hands folded behind his back, his posture relaxed but his mind razor-sharp. Surrounding him were towering Vorik officials, their reptilian features cast in flickering light from the massive hollow emblems above. A symbol of their might. A warning. Primarch XYR Arvas sat at the highest throne, his golden armor polished to a blinding sheen. His deep-set, predatory eyes fixated on Dane like a hunter watching prey. "You claim we owe humanity a favor." His voice was slow, deliberate, amused. "Do you think the Vorik forget so easily?" Dane didn't flinch. "Then you remember," he said, letting the silence stretch, "a century ago, when your empire was collapsing under the Zenthi plague. The Galactic Union abandoned you." "We didn't." A murmur rippled through the chamber. They remembered. Human medical ships had broken quarantine laws, risking extinction to save Vorik worlds. It wasn't charity. It wasn't a gamble. It was a calculated move, securing an ironclad debt that no one thought would ever be called in. Until now. XYR Arvas leaned forward, clawed fingers tapping the armrest of his throne. "And what is it you want, human?" Dane let his words land with the force of a hammer. "Exclusive Vorik technology. Military grade. And full recognition of Earth as an independent power in the Union." The hall fell silent. Then, laughter. Deep, guttural, mocking. XYR Arvas grinned, showing rows of serrated teeth. "You expect us to hand over our most advanced technology? To your kind?" His expression hardened, amusement vanishing like a switch flipped. "You overstep." Dane had anticipated resistance. What he hadn't expected was how little they feared consequences. That was a problem. He stepped forward, just enough to make them uncomfortable. "You signed an oath," he reminded them, voice level. "An unbreakable vow before the entire Union." XYR Arvas's eyes darkened. "We signed an agreement," he corrected, "with a species too weak to enforce it." The threat was clear. The Vorik had no intention of honoring their word. Dane's fingers twitched at his side, subtly activating his hidden neural link. Across the chamber, his AI, Cinder, embedded in his wrist implant, began slicing into Vorik data systems. He needed leverage. But XYR Arvas wasn't finished. "You will leave this chamber," he said, standing now, towering over Dane by a full 2 feet. "And you will leave without what you came for." Dane exhaled slowly. He had one last card to play. He smiled. "You misunderstand me, Primarch. I'm not asking." XYR Arvas tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his gaze. "And what exactly do you intend to do, human? Your people are not ready for war." Dane met his gaze without hesitation. "No, we're not," he admitted. "But we're very, very good at making life hell for people who break deals with us." He let that settle before continuing. "We both know the Vorik Empire isn't as stable as it looks. Internal fractures. Political rivals. Hidden military projects." The murmurs grew louder. Some of the council members were shifting uncomfortably now. Dane could smell blood in the water. XYR Arvas, however, remained still. Then, slowly, he smiled. "You are a nuisance, Mercer. But you are also interesting." A pause. "Very well," he said at last. "A challenge, then." Dane kept his expression neutral, but his gut tightened. He didn't like where this was going. XYR Arvas gestured to the guards, and a hollow screen flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It displayed a planet, Akar 7, a war-torn wasteland on the fringes of Vorik space. "We have a problem," XYR Arvas said. "A rebel faction has taken control of an outpost there. We need it eliminated, but sending our own forces would be politically inconvenient." Dane understood immediately. "You want me to do it?" XYR Arvas's grin widened. "Succeed, and we will discuss your request." Fail, and you will not leave Vorik space alive. Dane studied the holomap. A suicide mission. He could smell the trap a mile away. But he wasn't here to play by their rules. Deal, he said. The Primarch nodded once, and the meeting was over. Outside the chamber, Dane activated his comms. Cinder, he murmured. His AI's voice crackled to life in his implant. I hope you have a plan, because this smells like a setup. Dane exhaled. Yeah. And now we need to figure out how to turn this setup into a win. He glanced back at the towering palace of the Vorik. They thought they'd cornered him. They were wrong. Akar 7 was nothing but dust, ruins, and the stench of war. Dane crouched behind the jagged remains of a Vorik gunship, his pulse steady despite the distant echoes of gunfire. Overhead, the sky was thick with black clouds, artificial storms left behind from decades of orbital bombardment. It was a dead world, yet it still bled. He tapped the side of his helmet. Cinder, status. The AI's voice crackled through his earpiece. Vorik comms are encrypted, but I've intercepted movement patterns. Enemy patrols sweep every 12 minutes. They've got drone sentries, heat scanners, and anti-air defenses. The whole package. Dane glanced at the towering structure in the distance, the rebel outpost HFY wanted gone. It was a repurposed Vorik fortress, its jagged spires reaching toward the sky like broken teeth. He activated his visor's zoom function. Guards patrolled the perimeter, heavy plasma rifles slung over their shoulders. Unlike most rebels, these weren't scavengers or deserters. They were disciplined. Armed. Organized. That meant one thing. They're not rebels, Dane murmured. Cinder hesitated. Explain. They're Vorik. Loyalists pretending to be insurgents. He exhaled sharply. XYRVAS set this up. He sent me to wipe out his own people. Why? Dane's jaw clenched. To get rid of a faction without getting his hands dirty. If I do the job, he eliminates rivals without suspicion. If I refuse, he has an excuse to execute me. A game of power, and he was the pawn. A voice crackled through his comms. You still breathing down there? Dane smirked. Rivik. His pilot. Human, ex-smuggler, and the only person Dane trusted to fly him out if things went sideways. Barely, Dane muttered. How's our exit plan? Could be better. Rivik sounded amused. This storm is messing with the ship's systems. You need me for extraction, you better call before things go to hell. Dane scanned the fortress again. He needed to go inside, not destroy it. If he could find proof that these weren't rebels, he could turn the tables on XYRVAS. But first, he had to get past the security. Cinder, I need a distraction. I thought you'd never ask. A second later, an explosion ripped through the far side of the compound. Sirens blared. Guards shouted in confusion, rushing toward the smoke. Dane moved. He sprinted across the open ground, boots crunching against scorched rock. Reached the first guard before the Vorik even knew he was there. A swift strike to the throat, silent, efficient. He dragged the body into the shadows and kept moving. Near the entrance, he placed a small device against the security panel. The display flickered before Cinder's voice hummed in his ear. You're in. The doors hissed open. Dane slipped inside. The interior was worse than he expected. Metal corridors lined with Vorik banners. High-grade weapon stockpiles. Advanced war terminals displaying fleet movements. This wasn't an outpost. It was a hidden command center. Dane's stomach twisted. If this was exposed, it would mean galactic war. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. He ducked into a side room, pressing against the wall as two Vorik officers strode past, speaking in hushed tones. Does the Primarch suspect? One asked. The other scoffed. XYRVAS is blind. He believes he sent a human assassin to clean up a mess, not realizing the mess is his own making. Dane's pulse quickened. He recorded everything through his visor. Proof. Solid proof. Now he just had to escape. He turned to leave, but froze as a new voice cut through the air. You shouldn't be here. Dane spun, gun raised. A Vorik woman stood in the doorway, unarmed. Her armor was dark, marked with the insignia of high command. Sharp eyes studied him with more curiosity than fear. You're not a rebel, Dane said evenly. A slow nod. Neither are you. Tension crackled in the air. Then, she sighed. If you came here looking for truth, you found it. She gestured toward the war terminals. HFY plans to wipe out humanity. He's building a weapon. Something your people won't survive. Dane's grip on his gun tightened. Why are you telling me this? Her expression darkened. Because I want him stopped. A storm raged outside. Inside, war was already beginning. Dane tapped his comms. Revik. Yeah? Start the engines. We're getting out of here. And then, to the Vorik woman, you're coming with me. She hesitated, then nodded. Dane checked his weapon. Time to leave. Time to change the game. Dane Mercer had stolen plenty of things in his life, data, credits, ships, but tonight, he was stealing something far more valuable. A Vorik defector. And the truth. The command center's alarm shrieked as he sprinted down the metallic corridors, his new ally at his side. The Vorik woman, Commander Nixera, moved with the precision of a trained warrior. Together, they weaved through the maze of reinforced hallways, dodging security teams that had just realized their compound had been breached. You have a ship? Nixera asked, barely out of breath. If my pilot hasn't crashed it by now. Dane tapped his comm. Revik, tell me you're ready. Static. Then, about that. We've got a problem. Dane gritted his teeth. Of course we do. The Vorik fleet just arrived. Blockades in place. You need to get off that rock, fast. Dane cursed. HFY had planned ahead. The Primarch never expected Dane to succeed, but he did expect him to run. He was waiting for him to fail. Nixera gestured toward a junction. Supply hangars this way. There should be small jump craft inside. Dane didn't hesitate. Lead the way. They moved quickly, past steaming pipes and blinking control panels. The distant clatter of boots echoed behind them, Vorik soldiers closing in. Nixera palmed open the last door. The hangar spread before them, cavernous and dimly lit. A row of sleek Vorik interceptors lined the deck, their cockpits dark, their engines humming faintly. Dane grinned. Now that's more like it. Nixera's fingers flew over a nearby console, disabling security locks. These ships are fast, but their transponders will be tracked the moment we launch. Dane climbed into the nearest cockpit, flicking on the power switches. Then we better make it interesting. The hangar doors groaned open. Wind and dust blasted through the space as the storm outside raged. Then, the alarms changed. Nixera tensed. They're overriding the launch sequence. Dane's visor flickered. Cinder's voice cut in. Incoming hostiles. 5 squads, heavily armed. You might want to hurry. Dane strapped in. Revik, get above the clouds. I'll meet you in orbit. Better not be a lie, Mercer. Dane smirked. It's more of an optimistic prediction. Nixera fired up her ship beside him. Her voice came through the comm. Let's move. The doors sealed shut above them. A blast of acceleration crushed Dane into his seat as the Vorik interceptor shot into the sky, punching through the storm with brutal force. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and turbulence. Then, they broke through, into chaos. The Vorik fleet hung above Akar 7 like a nest of waiting predators. Warships bristled with energy cannons. Fighters swarmed like insects. And right in the middle, looming like a god, sat HFY's flagship. Dane exhaled. You just couldn't make this easy, could you? Nixera's voice was calm. What's the plan? Dane checked his systems. Their stolen fighters were fast but fragile. If they ran, they'd be gunned down. If they fought, they wouldn't last a minute. He needed an option that wasn't on the table. We're flying straight into HFY's hangar. Nixera hesitated. That's suicide. Dane smiled. Only if we die. He yanked the controls, sending the ship into a spiraling dive toward the heart of the fleet. Nixera followed, her engines burning hot. The Vorik reacted instantly. Fighters peeled off to intercept. Lasers ripped through space, streaking past them in glowing arcs. Cinder's voice chimed in. I hate to rush you, but your odds of survival are. Don't tell me the odds. Dane jerked the stick, skimming the underbelly of a battleship so close he could see the gun barrels swiveling. Nixera spoke through the link. They're not shooting at the flagship. Dane's grin widened. Exactly. HFY won't risk damaging his own ship. The fighters pursued, but as Dane predicted, their own fleet's defense systems hesitated. The flagship loomed ahead, its main hangar still open. Dane pushed the throttle. Brace yourself. A heartbeat later, their stolen ships slammed into the hangar bay at full speed, landing hard against the deck. Metal screamed. Sparks erupted. The impact nearly knocked the breath out of him. But they were inside. And that was all that mattered. The hangar swarmed with armed Vorik soldiers. Dane barely had time to unstrap before the first plasma bolt hissed past his head. He rolled out of the cockpit, drew his sidearm, and fired. The Vorik who had aimed at him collapsed with a hole in his chest. Nixera moved with deadly efficiency. A blur of motion and precision shots. Their cover wouldn't last. Dane activated his comm Cinder, send the data to every major power in the Union. You sure about that? This is going to start a war. Dane ducked behind a supply crate, returning fire. No, it's going to prevent one. HFY wants humanity erased. The Vorik Empire isn't as united as he thinks. The moment the other factions see the proof, they'll turn on him. A long pause. Then, Cinder said, uploading now. Nixera nodded approvingly. Smart. You're making him fight his own people. Dane grinned. He tried to use me as a pawn. I just promoted myself to king. The hangar doors slammed open. A squad of Vorik elites entered, weapons raised. And at the center, towering over them, was HFY himself. His golden armor gleamed. His eyes burned with hatred. Dane holstered his pistol. Pre-march. Nice of you to greet me personally. HFY stepped forward, voice like a blade. You think leaking secrets will save you? You have no escape. Dane smirked. Escape? No, I'm staying right here. Watching. While your empire tears itself apart. As if on cue, alarms blared through the ship. External comms exploded with chatter, panic, betrayal, internal power struggles unfolding in real time. HFY's face twisted in fury. Dane took a slow step forward. You could have honored your word. Instead, you tried to kill me. And now, because of that? Humanity just went from being your problem to being your equal. The Vorik soldiers hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their reptilian eyes. Their leader had failed them. Dane turned to Nixera. Time to go. She nodded. Together, they backed toward the nearest docking bay. The Vorik let them. They had bigger problems now. As Dane stepped onto the boarding ramp of the waiting shuttle, he cast one last glance at HFY. Never break a deal with a human. Then, he was gone. Dane Mercer had played the game and won. But winning wasn't the same as surviving. The stolen Vorik shuttle shook violently as it rocketed away from HFY's flagship, its engines straining against the gravity well of Akar 7. Dane gritted his teeth, gripping the controls as the ship jolted under fire. Plasma blasts streaked past, missing by inches. Nyxera sat beside him, monitoring the sensors. They're not giving up. Fighters inbound. Dane flicked the comms. Rivik, tell me you've got eyes on us. The pilot's voice crackled through the speakers. You're late, Mercer. Got a whole damn fleet chasing you. I can get you out, but you need to break atmosphere first. Working on it. A red warning flashed across the console, lock-on detected. Dane yanked the stick left. A missile streaked past, close enough to make the hull scream. Nyxera punched in new coordinates. Nearest jump point is 3 minutes out. We won't make it unless we shake them. Dane's fingers flew over the controls. The shuttle wasn't built for combat, but it had speed. Then we go faster. He gunned the thrusters. The engines roared, pushing the ship toward the upper atmosphere. Behind them, Vork fighters closed in, cannons heating up for the kill. Rivik, Dane called, I need something to even the odds. Funny you should say that. A moment later, an explosion tore through the sky. One of the pursuing fighters vanished in a fireball as Rivik's gunship punched through the chaos, cannons blazing. Nyxera let out a sharp breath. Did your pilot just ambush the Vork? Dane smirked. He's good at surprises. Rivik's voice came back. Jump points prepped. Get your asses in range, and I'll cover you. The Vork weren't backing down. More fighters surged forward, determined to stop them. Dane gritted his teeth and focused. The jump point was just ahead. 5 seconds. A missile lock blared again. 4. Nyxera fired the last of their countermeasures, detonating the projectile midair. 3. Rivik's ship swung around, laying down covering fire. 2. The Vork flagship loomed behind them, its main cannons charging. 1. Dane slammed the drive activation. The universe stretched and snapped as the jump engines engaged. Stars blurred. The Vork fleet vanished behind them. Then, silence. Dane exhaled slowly. Tell me we're clear. Nyxera checked the sensors. No pursuit. We made it. Rivik's laughter crackled over the comm. I can't believe that worked. You really do have a death wish, Mercer. Dane leaned back in his seat. What can I say? I make things interesting. Hours later, they sat aboard Rivik's ship, watching the fallout unfold. The Vork Empire was fracturing. The data Dane had leaked had spread across the Galactic Union. Political rivals turned against HFY, calling for his removal. Other alien factions demanded investigations into Vork war crimes. The Empire was eating itself alive. Nyxera stood near the viewport, arms crossed. The Vork are proud. They won't collapse overnight. But this is the beginning of the end for HFY. Dane studied her. She had been part of that empire once. Now, she was watching it burn. What happens to you? He asked. She didn't turn. I fight. For my people. For a better future. And you? Dane exhaled. I collect my favor. She looked at him then. You still think they'll honor it? Dane's smirk returned. They don't have a choice anymore. Because the Vork, for all their power, had learned one thing the hard way. Never break a deal with a human.